some circles, there is a lot of tension between journalists and content creators. People celebrate the rigor of journalism, and there are folks who celebrate the reach of content creators. We need all of the above.
Hey y'all, welcome to Create for Change, where we're gathering creatives to talk about the intersection of storytelling and social impact. Today we are stepping away from the headlines to have a real face-to-face conversation about storytelling, power, and the true cost of shifting culture. We are joined by Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, a White House correspondent, best-selling author, and a powerhouse journalist who has spent his career operating at the absolute intersection of media and change. Dr. Nii-Quartelai, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me to be here.
So tell me, how did you get here? Who are you? What should we know about you?
I come from a multi-heritage family. My father was born and raised in Ghana, West Africa. That's where my name, Nii-Quartelai Quartey, that's where it comes from. Native Ghanaians would say Nii-Quartelai Quartey. The intention behind my name is caregiver of the family. And so it's something I've taken very seriously for a very long time. My mother grew up in the Jim Crow South. My parents met at an HBCU in Tyler, Texas. I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. So much of my life's work is bringing some radical imagination to my students in the classroom. I certainly would not have become the author that I am. I certainly wouldn't be the political journalist I am. I certainly wouldn't show up in the classroom the way that I do as a professor if I wasn't building on these experiences.
You are multifaceted. You kind of do it all, so to speak. What came first?
I think it was the third grade treasurer of my class. I reported we have $108 in the bank, right? And that was my point of pride. That's an important piece of my journey, service to others. That carried me, to USC, where I studied broadcast journalism, I studied political science and critical approaches to leadership. And afterwards, instead of moving to a small market, as so many young journalists do, I took a job as a field deputy and press secretary for an LA school board member. And that led to working on campaigns and doing a lot of advocacy work with some of the biggest brands in the business, the American Heart Association, AARP. And then during COVID, I was so disappointed. I was so concerned about the volume of mis and disinformation around the COVID vaccine, particularly to Black and brown communities, the LGBTQ community. I felt drawn to do something different. I left my big cushy job and I did a hit on the Sunday show with Jonathan Capehart on MSNBC. And that was the beginning of my return to journalism, which was always my first love.
To fast forward, what do you do? Your day-to-day, your week-to-week, what is it?
My job is really as a political journalist and an educator. I host A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. That's a Tavis Smiley station based in Los Angeles. I also contribute to the Tavis Smiley Show, which is nationally syndicated. I occasionally pop up on cable news, offering my political analysis on news of the day. On the education side of the house, I teach a course on advocacy and organizing at one of my alma maters, Pepperdine University. I teach in the social entrepreneurship and change master's program. I'm in the business of helping to shape the minds and hopefully leave an impression on the hearts of young leaders. But I also interview a lot of seasoned leaders, people who've been around. Some people are in public office, many people are not, but these are the people who are shaping our politics and shaping our culture every day.
I want to go a little bit to the state of storytelling. It's 2026. You are kind of in all these media circles. You're an educator. What keeps you up at night in terms of the state of media, the state of journalism, the state of advocacy?
I think one of the things that keeps me up late at night is the integrity of information. It's not lost on me that for folks in Black and brown communities, we happen to be the targets of a lot of mis and disinformation by bad actors, both foreign and domestic. And I think one of the challenges that has arrived is our ability to trust the information that we're getting, right, is fair, researched, is without an agenda.
It's getting wild out there. Like, you could just scroll and I'm like, this is not even real, but the amount of just likes and engagement being like, oh my gosh, no, y'all, we got
loud and wrong. How often have we seen posts on social media that are just loud and wrong?
Yeah.
You scrolling through Instagram or, said platform, and you gotta know what to look for. There are platforms out there that are able to take innocent photos of us and create X-rated deep fakes of what we look like without clothes. That is crazy. I think this independent media revolution that is afoot provides an opportunity to advance that cause of media literacy, making sure that the people who stand to be harmed the most understands how to, interrogate news and information. I don't think we need to be in the business of subtraction. We need to be in the business of addition. In some circles, there is a lot of tension between journalists and content creators. People celebrate the rigor of journalism, and there are folks who celebrate the reach of content creators. We need all of the above.
How do you think about kind of your own education around shaping your voice? What does it look like on the day-to-day?
I try to make sure that I am lifting up those stories that are being suppressed, those stories that, provide folks with the information that they need in order to figure out how they're going to govern themselves, in order to figure out who they're going to vote to govern them. There's an app called Interval News. It's one of my favorite apps so far this year, and this is just me talking. I ain't got no collaboration with them. This is nothing paid. Interval News does a good job, sort of aggregating news stories from across so many different sources. And they're able to shine a light on news stories that are being widely reported versus stories that are reported moderately versus news stories that are suppressed. There are people that are in the business of ambulance chasing, meaning that they're chasing the latest big story, whether it's, consequential or not. If it's an opportunity to gain followers, to gain views, there are a lot of people that are in that business. I am invested in providing people with information they can trust.
I think we're seeing kind of, if you don't support it, media goes away. So people are like, oh my, that doesn't exist anymore. You got to ask why. It's because they don't got the money. So how do you think about, encouraging folks to really support new media?
Well, I think part of it, and we know this, as Black folks that are in community with Black folks. We know this as queer folks who are in community with queer folks, what it means to really not just support the community, but to be in community. We get that. And I would implore other folks to consider that frame as they look at where to invest their time, their talent, and their treasure. I think it's also important that we are producing products that are of quality, right? It doesn't have to be perfect when you start, but over time, how can we make it more perfect? How can we make it a better product? And so that's on us as journalists, as content creators to figure that out. And certainly with a lot of the AI tools out there, I think there's an opportunity for solopreneurs and people who are still just beginning to scale their operation. There are ways to do it that are more affordable than ever. If I could borrow a bar from the great Erykah Badu, one of my favorite artists, one of her lyrics says, you got to pick your friends like you pick your fruit. And I oftentimes tell people you got to pick your media like you pick your fruit. You don't just put anything in your cart, and you don't just put any old thing in your body. I think this is the moment that we're living in. Subscribing to folks' Substack, subscribing to newsletters from people who are in community with you, for folks that you trust, that you can trust. All of that stuff matters. And shameless plug, you can subscribe to a More Perfect Union podcast. I am so grateful to be a part of the KBLA family, a family curated by the great Tavis Smiley, pioneers like Tavis Smiley, who were leading the independent media revolution before we thought about it as an independent media revolution.
You get to talk with a lot of newsmakers, political leaders. There's like a frustration from folks around the brokenness of the political system. So I'm curious, like in talking with them, what are the questions that we should all be asking as media, as curators, to be begin solving toward the solution here?
I heard Maryland Governor Wes Moore say recently is that when it comes to Democrats don't have a message problem as much as we have a results problem. There's something to that. We see voters across the political spectrum that are enraged. They're enraged because of the affordability crisis. It really feels like an existential threat to families across the country. They are enraged by particularly the housing crisis, right? The fact that it costs so much to fulfill a basic need. Mm-hmm. They're enraged by the homelessness crisis. Every time somebody walks by and they see a homeless encampment, it acts as a billboard for the dysfunction in government. People aren't seeing results that match the level of investment. That has created an environment where you have folks who are able to run for public office on a populist message. And when they get there, it's more about self-service than public service. I think there are folks who see that in Washington, D.C., and not just in the White House, by the way. Mm-hmm. Right here in the city of Los Angeles, you have Spencer Pratt, a reality TV guy who is running for mayor of Los Angeles, has no experience in government, right? And as much as I know about his background, he had a business where, he made a little bit of money and lost a lot more money, right? Right. And this is somebody that, by the way, the sitting president, another reality TV star, says he likes this guy. He likes this guy. As someone who has deep roots here in Los Angeles, I understand that people are PO'd. I understand for folks who lost everything in the LA wildfires. I cannot imagine how disorienting that is. I can't imagine how painful that is. But voting for someone, supporting someone, who doesn't have any ideas in terms of, well, what are they going to do differently? And I worry that in this environment where basically anybody can get it, we may be supporting people who in the long term aren't for us. They're for themselves. I try to cut through that noise, through my work in witness. On my show, More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, I do my best to invite people on to help us separate the fact from the fiction. People who know what they're talking about. People who have opinions, but they're informed opinions.
Yeah. I think with that in mind, I think we often go to kind of the problems as just, particularly in the political spheres, that's wrong, that's wrong. I'm often asked from clients and partners being who's doing it right? It's everybody's doing it wrong, but curious if you have thoughts around who you're that's impressive.
I think there are a number of folks, who are doing the best they can with the hand that they're dealt. But I think there are also folks who are cut above the rest, one of which is Mayor Mamdani of New York City. I think he clearly understands why voters supported him. He understands his assignment. Most recently, he got an invitation to go to the Met Gala. He was wise enough to recognize that probably wouldn't bode well given the public sentiment right now, given the serious concerns that people have with folks attached to this year's Met Gala, who also have relationships with the Trump administration. I think the mayor is able to sort of read the room and recognize that's not where he needed to be. And this is a mayor that hasn't even been in office a year, right? And, there's a grocery store that is going up in East Harlem. This is someone who didn't just talk about providing affordable childcare to New Yorkers, but this is somebody who's actually making progress, working collaboratively with the governor of New York to deliver on that. That's not asking for much. And so I think Mayor Mamdani of New York City reminds folks that, we're not crazy, right? That we can expect and should expect our public officials to deliver against some of our basic needs. His communications team is a 21st century communications team. I think public officials should look at how well he is communicating with the people using new tools to do that. I think he just announced that in the spirit of former President FDR and the fireside chats, He's going to be doing his own sort of live stream, his YouTube live streams where everyday people get to ask the mayor questions. Imagine that.
Yeah.
We're seeing a generational shift in leadership. So I think it's important to note that most organizations move more like a battleship than a speedboat. And I think that makes change a little harder. It takes a little bit more time. You know, recently the DNC released the 2024 autopsy of the 24 campaign. There is lots to talk about based on what's in that really draft report. There are a number of numbers in that report that stand out at me, but one of the numbers I saw, $65 million invested in voter contact. So wait a minute, you raise $1 billion, but of $1 billion, most of that went towards media ads. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of money to be made off of buying media.
Good commission.
Right?
Yeah, we see you.
But only $65 million goes to voter contact. It brought so many things into focus for me. I remember hearing from folks on the ground in battleground states like Pennsylvania and North Carolina telling me that first time they got a knock on the door from the Harris-Walz campaign was for get out the vote. That's deeply troubling that those investments were not made earlier. And what was even more troubling is just the number of folks who made tens of millions of dollars off of this campaign. You might remember that Vice President Harris had to retire the debt even after the campaign. It's a cold game, and I don't think that dog's gonna hunt anymore. And so I think there has to be a reckoning with the business model of the DNC. There's got to be reckoning with the business model of political campaigns in this media environment, right? People aren't watching TV like they used to. People are listening to podcasts like this. You know, people are watching more YouTube than ever. There's a report out by Hit Strategies that shared that a lot of Black male voters, for example, go to YouTube for their political news. And so that means that these campaigns need to catch up and need to meet the actual voters where they're at. And by the way, when it comes to, you know, folks saying, oh, well, you know, maybe Democrats just need to, you know, stray away from identity politics and focus more, you know, on centrist issues. That's BS. I encourage other people to follow the money. You want to know that people are making good decisions and that the return on investment is there. This is the time for folks to demand more of their leaders, in public office or not. If leaders do not respond accordingly, then there are other levers that people can pull peacefully. There are more conservative podcasts than ever, right? Conservatives dominate the talk radio landscape. Look at how much Fox News has grown over the years and how that represents this sort of, you know, conservative echo chamber, right? Folks on the left just haven't made those sorts of investments. It's only going to get harder to get your message out there, potentially more expensive for you to get your message out there because you're having to play such a game of catch up. In the meantime, if you continue to hire these consultants who've been around forever, you want to keep raising money so they can invest in these strategies that make them rich, but don't help you win.
I think there is a deep donor fatigue, particularly if we're going to see investments in things like an autopsy or things like broadcast that kind of is like burning money. If they see that and they see a mismanagement of their funds, your grassroots donors and even your big donors they have a lot more questions for you around how their money is getting spent, to your point around the ROI.
That's right.
As you think about 2026, where we are now, going into 2028, what are you thinking about? What do you think people should keep in mind as they kind of consider where we're going?
Well, I think people should consider, as we head into 2026, how people consume information. To the extent that we are able to think about our work as a surround sound effect, right? I say this as somebody who's an author of Kamala, the Motherland, and Me. I had an opportunity to travel to Africa with Vice President Harris. We're in Ghana, Tanzania, and Zambia. And, you know, I can't tell you how many people still to this day tell me, why did I never know about this trip? I never knew she did that. I didn't know she cared about Africa. I didn't know that she spent more time on foreign soil in Africa than anywhere else in the world.
Didn't know that.
You didn't know because we didn't turn up the volume on that experience. We didn't lean into opportunity to create some surround sound around it. And so, I would petition you and any of your viewers or listeners to think about their work in that way. You can have a project that can live on YouTube, right? That can live in the audio space, right? Can potentially go into theaters for a limited run, right? Can be translated into a live event. That to me represents the future of storytelling, the future, when it comes to community, when it comes to showing up for one another. That's what this can look like from my vantage point.
So to end it off, I think you've done your pitch already, but how can people support you?
Oh, did I do my pitch?
You've done it throughout. You've sprinkled it throughout, but I want you to do one last time.
Well, I want to encourage folks to follow me on social media at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and I pop right on up, fresh for you to follow. Also, download the KBLA app to listen to A More Perfect Union live from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, weekdays, Monday through Thursday. Also, subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast, powered by KBLA Talk 1580. That way, you get to catch some of my most memorable conversations with people who are shaping our politics and shaping our culture.
Awesome.
Did I mention the book?
You didn't mention in that pitch. You didn't. You wanna?
Well, Kamala, the Motherland, and Me. If you want to learn more about this story, then absolutely, go to Mahogany Books, because we love Black bookstores. Online, go to Mahogany Books, or you can go anywhere books are sold and get your copy of Kamala, the Motherland, and Me. It won't disappoint.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Nii-Quartelai.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.